Pakistan has apparently said that the pilot release will be a peace gesture. The Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan said the Indian Air Force pilot will be released tomorrow. We know that this will be a massive reason for a sigh of relief across the country for people who are very concerned about the well-being of Wing Commander Abhinandan. But he will be released, confirmed by the Pakistan Prime Minister tomorrow. And this is I mean, we were talking this entire morning about conditions that Pakistan wanted to place. India put out, and India standing its ground very clearly, saying we will not accept any conditions at all. Pakistan obviously is buckled now and said that we will release him as a peace gesture. So really what Pakistan wants right now is to de-escalate the situation, and this is perhaps the best way to do that. This is information that's coming in. Imran Khan has made a statement saying the Indian Air Force pilot, Wing Commander Abhinandan, who was captured by Pakistan yesterday and has been in custody of Pakistan since then, will be released tomorrow. He has made this announcement in Parliament, which is very important. He has said that they will release him, and they will release him as a peace gesture. Vinay Tiwari is with me in the studio. Vinay, this is extremely important. This means that the hard line that our Ministry of External Affairs had taken, saying that we will not negotiate with you, has paid off.
Absolutely. It's absolutely paid off. And it also tells you that the international pressure on Pakistan has also been a factor behind them realizing the dangers and the damages of continuing to hold him hostage. I mean,
Yes.
the fact that he was, there's been universal condemnation of what Pakistan did and support for what India did. Pakistan's isolation has also played a big role in that. And I think the Indian government's consistent position on not negotiating a thing, even though if you remember, the Pakistanis did try that. The Qureshi's comment earlier in the day did talk about we will do it if it brings down escalation. That was conditional. But I think the Indian response about no conditions, no deal, nothing, you have to release him without any conditions, has paid off, and it's paid off massively.
But I also want to look at this portion of the comment that Imran Khan has made, which is that the release will be a peace gesture. So what he's saying effectively is that he wants to de-escalate from here. He doesn't want this going any further.
One is de-escalation for sure. This will certainly de-escalate the situation. But I think this is more of trying to score a brownie point. He's just trying to portray themselves as peace-loving. That's
Yes.
also the reason behind using this terminology is because they want to have a moral upper ground in saying, oh, we did it because we wanted peace. So this is also positioning. But the fact of the matter is that this has been done because they've realized there is no maneuvering space for Pakistan anymore. And they are in no position to actually carry out any kind of a negotiation or to attempt a quid pro quo from the Indian side, because the Indian side is extremely clear about releasing the wing commander unconditionally.
Let me just read out some of the statements that are coming in at this point, and I'll read out, Prime Minister Imran Khan has said he tried to call Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the phone because escalation is not in our interest or in India's interest. I wonder if that call didn't go through because network has been so bad lately. But to say that he tried to call, this goes against what we know about, bilateral conversations. They don't happen. I mean, it's not like you pick up the phone and attempt to dial someone.
Yeah, no, so I think what he meant was that they have sent a message to the Indian Prime Minister's office that they want to talk, but it has not happened yet. But I mean, I think they were trying to say that the message that has been sent was sent because we wanted this to de-escalate. That's the idea.
He also says, and this is from PTV News official, from their verified account, they're quoting the Prime Minister. He said, in our desire for peace, I announced that tomorrow, as a first step to open negotiations, Pakistan will be releasing the Indian Air Force officer in our custody. Two nations with weapons of mass destruction should not divulge on the path of war. I seek peace with India. He goes on to say, I address the Indian government. Do not force us for retaliation. We are prepared for any eventuality and response. I beseech India not to force us down the path of war. He goes on to say, the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar chose to live in bondage. Tipu Sultan chose to die free. The hero of Pakistan is Tipu Sultan. That's actually not connected to anything else in any way. It's a really random sort of postscript attachment to make to that statement. But to examine a couple of things that he said, our first step to open negotiations. He's used the word dialogue, he's used the word negotiation, he's used the word let's talk about it a lot. Does this mean anything?
No, it doesn't, because I'll tell you why. Because he is addressing his own constituency right now. In the parliament, he's talking, there is a very belligerent opposition that was already gunning for him.
Yes.
He's facing a problem from within Pakistani people as well. The only slight handle that they got was Wing Commander Abhinandan's capture. This was the only talking point they perhaps got to some extent. But the fact of the matter is, all this is about addressing his own constituency. He's trying to position himself as somebody who is interested in peace and trying to portray as if India is the country which is wanting a war.
Yes, which is pushing for war, and he's begging us to be more reasonable. Major General P.K. Sehgal is with us. Major General Sehgal, obviously this is good news for all of us who sort of had most of our thoughts on Wing Commander Abhinandan, and we wanted him to come home. His family is going to be so relieved as well that he is going to come home. But the rest of the statements being made by Pakistan saying that we're releasing him as a peace gesture, we're releasing him as our attempt to open negotiations. What is your response to that?
Pakistan has been forced to make this statement primarily because they were isolated. There was huge international pressure, and India had taken up a very strong stance that there is going to be no quid pro quo, and there is going to be no change in our stance, that there will be no negotiations whatsoever, no conditions will be acceptable. And Pakistan has clearly understood that India is meaning business. Under the circumstances, I think it is a very fair statement from Pakistan that we are going to release him tomorrow without any conditions. There will be a huge jubilation within our country, and I am very certain this gesture of Pakistan will not go unnoticed. It is bound to our carrot and stick policy will stand further vindicated.
Yes, and of course, the stance that were taken by India, Major General Sehgal, where we said that we will not budge, we will not negotiate. This is not room for negotiation. There will be no conditions on the release of Wing Commander Abhinandan. All of those stands have also come through because the Ministry of External Affairs did not blink. They were clear about what India's stand was on this.
In this psychological war between India and Pakistan, India did not wink, but Pakistan has actually come down by several notches. They will have to compromise as far as the Indian minimum bottom line is concerned. We have clearly indicated that we are not against talks, but for talks they have to create a conducive climate. And what is that conducive environment climate? We've said Pakistan must not allow its soil to be used for terrorism or terrorist activities against India. Secondly, they must stop cross-border violations. They've got to stop ceasefire violations, and they've got to make sure that transparent action is taken against Masood Azhar, against Lakhvi, and against Hafiz Saeed, the perpetrators of Mumbai, Pathankot and Uri. Unless and until this is done, India is not willing to talk under any circumstances. This is our minimal negotiating position. And Pakistan is getting the message that India is a different India under the present dispensation as against the India in the past. Had we taken similar steps after the Mumbai thing, perhaps the situation would have never come to such a pass. We wouldn't have suffered at the hands of Pakistan for so many years. We lost so many innocent lives because this gave rise to Pakistan's terrorism, because Pakistan always took it for granted that India is a soft state, India is a weak state, India is a banana republic and can be played around. This government is very clearly indicated that our patience has come to an end, and hereafter we meaning total business, and we go to enforce the rules.
Absolutely.
The initiative is strongly in our hands. The narrative has changed, the strategy has changed.
Absolutely, and I suppose, you know, this is what it means when you're in a conflict of any sort. The mood changes constantly, and you know, the one-upmanship is constantly on. At this point, India is in a position of power, just like Major General Sehgal told us. Would you think, Vinay, now at this point, India has several options before it. Will it consider saying, you know what, you want to sit and talk? These are our demands, and that's when we'll sit and talk. At this point, what are India's options? Well,
actually, to be honest, now that the Prime Minister of Pakistan has announced his release, the real diplomatic government level the real issue or the real tackling will begin from tomorrow. Once Wing Commander Abhinandan is back on Indian soil, safely with us and with our authorities, this is where the real push and the diplomacy, the diplomatic efforts will start. Because in many ways, it is now up to India to lay down the policy for future for good. This small little blip in the radar of them having one commander is now out of the equation.
Yes.
Now, Pakistan is attempting and pretending to be a peace-loving country who's trying to talk to India and contain terror and all of that. Does India fall into this pretension yet again? Or does India say, enough, we've heard enough of these peace overtures from you, we've heard enough about, we are serious about terror from you, and we don't believe you anymore. And we will continue to maintain a hardline position of every time if you do something like this, we will go in and hit your terror camps. That is when the real policy, continuity of policy initiative and the intent will come out. And I think that is why this is a very turning point day in many ways tomorrow, because post tomorrow, the Indian government will perhaps open up its mind on whether we want to continue with this or we really want to go back to the talking table, so to speak, in terms of dealing with Pakistan.
Right. So this is an opportunity for India to lay down the rules for the future. You don't want to lose an opportunity like this, where you can actually drive home the point. And we've been talking about this for the last 24 hours, that basically it's going to be important at this point to make sure that we solve the problem for the long term. And we don't allow the terrorism to sort of begin breeding again.
Absolutely. So the first turning point came when Indian Air Force went inside Balkot. They broke that self-appointed line of restraint where they said we will not cross over the LOC. We did. We hit their target, hit it well and came back. The second big initiative, or the second big point, was that Indians very categorically said that this was an act against terror. It was not an act against the military. It was not an act against the civilians. We are targeting terror and we have every right to do that in self-defense. So we've already broken one barrier. After that, now with Pakistan being economically at its weakest, militarily having to face a problem from 3 borders. Remember, they have a serious problem vis-a-vis the Iranian border. They have a problem with Afghanistan, and now we have India. And international isolation of Pakistan obviously now means that this is, and then now them blinking over releasing Wing Commander Abhinandan without any condition as the Indians wanted, gives the government an opportunity to now drive it home.
And that will be the big question of how India drives it home from here on. Meenakshi joins us now, my colleague in Delhi. Meenakshi, what can you tell us at this point about information you're picking up from the Ministry of External Affairs on the conversations or any sort of response that India will make to the Pakistan Prime Minister who's just spoken in their parliament?
Well, Faye, this very important meet which will be addressed by the 3 service chiefs later in the evening today already has a very, very happy beginning to it. We have good news coming in from the government of Pakistan, and this is happening in the face of a no-nonsense policy being adopted by the government of India, where today MEA sources clearly reiterated as to how there is going to be absolutely no deal-making into the release of Wing Commander Abhinandan. And that, despite that, we are hearing this statement come in from Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan, just making that announcement a short while back as to how he is seeing this as a move towards peace, and he hopes that this will lead to further de-escalation. But very quickly, some perspective for our viewers, this was building up since early morning today. I remember their Foreign Minister Qureshi a little earlier, before these announcements from Pakistani Prime Minister came about in the second half of the day. In the morning, there were indications as to how the Pakistani Foreign Minister was communicating the desire of the Pakistani Prime Minister about releasing Wing Commander Abhinandan, and how they were making attempts to perhaps consider seeing a conducive atmosphere to have a conversation with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That conversation, of course, according to the Pakistani Prime Minister, did not take place, because he made some attempts to call Indian Prime Minister last evening, which could not fructify. But that apart, this is a very, very important shot in the arm for India, given the fact that the eyes of the international community are on India and also on Pakistan. And for Pakistan, this is also another opportunity which the Pakistani Prime Minister, through his own speech, is highlighting that the intention of Pakistan is to not engage in continued heightened tensions with India, but rather focus on the path to peace. So again, the 3 service chiefs briefing today, which is slated for a little later in the evening, already has a big, happy beginning to it. Wing Commander Abhinandan all set to be brought home tomorrow, Faye.
Well, Wing Commander Abhinandan set to be brought home tomorrow. We understand Prabhu Dayal is on the phone line. Mr. Dayal, thank you for joining us on the phone line. We were discussing this a couple of hours ago, that India was digging its heels in and, standing its ground, saying we will not negotiate. Obviously, that stand has now paid off.
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm not just relieved, I'm absolutely delighted that Wing Commander Abhinandan has been released. because every Indian was worried about the sort of treatment that was being meted out to him. There were lots of questions being raised and lots of things being discussed. My estimation and regard for Imran Khan has gone up 1,000 times. I always had a huge amount of admiration for his cricketing abilities, and I think that he has also shown a large heart and leadership qualities. He is operating under a lot of pressure. There are, of course, all sorts of signs that he is just the puppet of the army. But I have no doubt that Imran Khan's stamp on this development is very clear, because he, I think, has gone out of his way to perhaps cajole the army, to talk to the other segments of Pakistani society. When there was a news item that he's going to be talking to our Prime Minister, I had an inkling that probably he just wants to break some good news. Otherwise, why would he be picking up the telephone to talk to Prime Minister Modi? There may also have been other factors at play. The Americans were trying to intervene. There were other mediators and go-betweens. But all said and done, this is a good development. Now, what should we do? I think we should also be responsive. You know, there have been earlier occasions when tensions between India and Pakistan have skyrocketed. You would recall that in 1987, there was a lot of tension over Operation Brass Tacks, and it was almost as if the two countries were going to war. Then President Ziaul-Haq paid a surprise visit to Delhi and also went to Jaipur to watch the cricket match. But that one gesture deflated the entire tension balloon that had started looming before everybody and helped to de-escalate tensions. I think Imran Khan's gesture of releasing our fighter pilot, I think, is of a very high order. And India must also be responsive, must welcome. Of course, there are lots of problems in our relationship. It's a very thorny relationship. It has seen many ups and downs. But it is important to try and iron things out, and this is a welcome development. I would like our government to take a positive note of it and to respond suitably.
So what are the options before India right now? Obviously, and Pakistan has said this not once but twice. Imran Khan has said we want to do this as a beginning of a dialogue. We urge India not to go down the path of war. We want to begin conversation. So what are the options before India at this point?
Well, the options are to persuade Pakistan to engage in a dialogue with the view to clamping down on terror emanating from Pakistan. You know, in the longer term, it is in our interests that we get Pakistan's cooperation to eliminate the sort of outfits which operate from within Pakistan and which are even beginning to hurt Pakistan itself. Pakistani society has been derailed on account of extremist Islamic outfits which are operating there. Just a few months ago, after the Supreme Court had passed a judgment acquitting Asia Bibi in the blasphemy case, jihadi outfits, extremist outfits that Tehreek-e-Labbaik had taken to the streets and blockaded roads, blockaded traffic, and brought life to a standstill. The government had to capitulate. And the government was not at all happy that it had to cave in to the demands of the extremists. These people had passed a sort of a fatwa against the judges of the Supreme Court, including the ones who had pronounced the judgment acquitting Asia Bibi. And the Supreme Court had to intervene and say that all these fatwas will be regarded as illegal. Now, it is probably something that we ought to realize that Pakistan is undergoing a very difficult phase and that the Prime Minister of Pakistan is facing an uphill task to bring things to normalcy. They are facing a very difficult economic situation, but more significantly, they are facing a very difficult internal political situation. Of course, the army stands out against.
Yes, a couple of things I just want to bring in. We're getting more information. We understand he would be released at the Wagah border. That's information that's just coming in. Wing Commander Abhinandan will be released at the Wagah border. The Prime Minister is likely to address the country shortly. Our Prime Minister was likely to address the country shortly, and that's something we'd be looking forward to. This is what you were talking about, Vinay, that they will put out details of which border he will be brought to and what that exchange, the nature of that exchange will be like as well.
Yes, so when Flight Lieutenant Nachiketa was captured during the Kargil, the International Red Cross's Pakistan division was actually the agency which reached to receive him first. So the first contact between Nachiketa and somebody else apart from the Pakistani military was actually the International Red Cross people. And the Red Cross, along with the Pakistani security officials, escorted him till the Wagah border. Then he was taken across the border, put on a special plane, and then brought to Delhi. And I think he reached it around 10:30 at night. The plane reached it around 10:30 at night, because these things get a little delayed at the border. But yes, there is a precedence of that happening via the Wagah border. And that's perhaps what is going to happen today for sure.
Well, we also perhaps need to look at some of the other things that have been said by Prime Minister Imran Khan in his parliament. And although some of it, like you said, needs to be taken with a pinch of salt, because he is addressing his own country at this point. He's trying to pacify his own opposition. He uses the word peace an awful lot, sometimes twice in one sentence. So it's obviously something he's trying to drive in. He's saying, don't, force our efforts to, don't see our efforts to de-escalate as weakness. And Pakistan is deeply engaged in peace process in Afghanistan. Just like that, we are deeply engaged and invested in the peace process with India.
Well, I must tell you this, that I have very, very deep disagreements with Mr. Prabhu Dayal. I mean, he's been a very respected diplomat, so I don't want to counter him on diplomacy.
Yes.
But on his assessment of Imran Khan, I have absolutely deep disagreements with him, and I'll tell you why. Yes, he was a great cricketer, and all of us perhaps once upon a time saw his flamboyance.
You obviously keep coming back to this. No, you believe that India, as a cricket-loving nation, perhaps is maintaining some of that romanticism.
Exactly.
Yes.
I do believe that a large part of India has this romantic notion about Imran Khan, the man with the flowing locks. He's not the same guy. And I can guarantee you this, Mr. Prabhu Dayal's interpretation of this is that Imran Khan's, it is his personal initiative which has led to him announcing. He's just the face. There is no question that he has said so if the army was not in agreement with it. I cannot believe that Imran Khan has taken a decision to release Wing Commander Abhinandan without the army and ISI being on board. They are not going to let him survive for a month if he has taken the decision against their advice. So this is clearly has been done after has been discussed with the Pakistani armed forces and the ISI, and it's a decision, it's a strategic decision. His repeated use of the word peace, frankly, is as old a bogey as we've seen for the last 4 or 5 heads of state that they've had. Whether it was Nawaz Sharif, it was Musharraf has also spoken peace. I mean, a man who attacked India has also spoken about peace. He's also spoken about talks. He came to Agra to do a peace talk. And we all know what happened in the Agra summit. I mean, what a royal disaster that was. So,
do we have the sound bite from the Pakistan Prime Minister? And I think that we could play it. We could play it now. We could play it now. Could we just play that out, please?
हिंदुस्तान का पायलट हमने पकड़ा हुआ है. हम एज ए पीस जेस्टर हम उसको कल रिहा करने लगे हैं हिंदुस्तान को वापस.
That was just the short, bite there. But we must remember, and we must remind our viewers that while this announcement is made, we have to hold our horses a little bit until Abhinandan is safely on Indian soil. So while this is a moment of relief and we're all grateful and happy that he's going to be back home, let's treat this also with some level of, calm and make sure the idea is really that things stay the way they are until tomorrow when he does come home.
Yes, and also because personally, if you ask me, I don't have any trust on Pakistanis at all. I don't have any faith in Pakistani. They can go back on words way too quickly. Although I can't believe that if after a Prime Minister has announced it in the middle of a parliament session to his people, he would go back on that. But yes, you're right. I think till he comes back, we should hold our horses a bit.
Yes. In fact, we understand that the briefing right now of the 3 armed forces will also begin. It was scheduled to begin at 5 p.m. Since this information has just come in, they might have had to revise a little bit of what they're saying. Otherwise, it's unlikely that anyone from the armed forces would be 6 minutes late for anything.
It's never possible.
So there would be people already assembled in the Ministry of Defense waiting for that, for that press conference to begin. We're about 6 minutes late on that press conference, but I'm assuming they're working in details of Abhinandan's release, Wing Commander Abhinandan's release, who is now going to come home to a hero's welcome.
Yes, I mean, he's a hero for sure. There's no question about that. He's India's hero. irrespective of anything that may have happened, he's an absolute hero. And the fact that there is enough evidence and more that he shot down an F-16 as well, he's done something which frankly has not happened in a long, long time. I mean, we've not had a dogfight mid-air as a war scenario for a long, long time.
You know, there was this question, and I suppose it's safe to ask this question now, and there were some people who asked it, people like yourself perhaps, who are familiar with what the ammunition and the equipment that the Indian Air Force has. Why was he chasing an F-16 with a MiG-21?
There is a misunderstanding on that. I think people haven't understood the MiG-21's Bisons, which are the upgraded version of the MiG-21. They are not exactly the MiG-21s of what we know.
40 years ago.
Absolutely. The Bison is a more advanced plane which has been retrofitted with much newer avionics, much better payloads and much better capabilities. So it's not that a Bison is a very trusted part of the Indian Air Force. That is one. Two, also remember that there are formations and different kinds of planes are located in different air bases. Which one scrambles first also depends upon how closest he is to the scene of the corridor.
Yes, yes.
So, but Bison is not an unequal plane.
Yes, and also people who said that, oh, you know what, you don't want them chasing or dogfighting in a Sukhoi or in a Mirage because they're too expensive. That's not true either.
I don't know. No army looks at that at all. I mean, I don't think that's very well informed. It's not that at all. But I think the amazing thing is that even in Kargil there was no dogfight because it was really the Air Force was being used only for bombing operations, and that is pretty much what most air forces now do.
Are used for now.